We all know that time is running out, so we better get our facts straight. Is the harpazo that Paul spoke about in 1 Thessalonians 4:17 real? Is there really a catching up or snatching away of the church before the wrath? I think so. Paul revealed the mystery. But did God give us any information about the rapture through the prophets of old? I'm convinced of it, but you can tell me what you think. But let's take a look at it and see. So we'll start with Isaiah 26. Starting with verse 19, it reads, "Your dead will live, their bodies will rise. Awake and sing, you who dwell in the dust, for you will be covered with the morning dew, but the earth shall cast out the dead. Come, my people, enter your chambers, and shut your doors behind you. Hide yourself, as it were, for a little moment, until the indignation or wrath is past. For behold, the Lord comes out of his place to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their iniquity." We know that the Israelites perceived this through the ages as a testament to the resurrection. But I believe that this is the rapture because verse 20 says, "Come, my people, enter your chambers and shut your doors behind you and hide yourself because the indignation is coming." When the resurrection happens, like if this was just at the end and everybody's resurrected, there's nothing to hide from. So let's just keep that in mind and move on. We're going to go to the prophet Zephaniah, chapter 2. And it reads, "Gather yourselves together. Yes, gather together, O undesirable nation, before the decree is issued, or the day passes like chaff. Before the Lord's fierce anger comes upon you, before the day of the Lord's anger comes upon you. Seek the Lord, all you meek of the earth, who have upheld his justice. Seek righteousness, seek humility. It may be that you will be hidden in the day of the Lord's anger." So what we're seeing here is, again, an emphasis, an urging to be right, be humble, make sure that that day doesn't pass where you won't get hidden so that you are not a subject to the fierce anger of the Lord. We're going to talk more about this in a bit, but let's move on now to my favorite psalm. It says in 2 Samuel 22 that David spoke to the Lord the words of this song on the day when the Lord had delivered him from the hand of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul. So that's why he's writing this psalm. So you can find it both 2 Samuel 22 or Psalm 18. But I'm going to read it from Psalm 18 in the NIV. "I love you, Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. My God is my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. I called to the Lord, who is worthy of praise, and I have been saved from all my enemies. The cords of death entangled me. The torrents of destruction overwhelmed me. The cords of the grave coiled around me. The snares of death confronted me. In my distress, I called to the Lord. I cried to my God for help. From his temple, he heard my voice. My cry came before him into his ears. The earth trembled and quaked, and the foundations of the mountains shook. They trembled because he was angry. Smoke rose from his nostrils. Consuming fire came from his mouth. Burning coals blazed out of it." Now I'm going to interrupt. When do you suppose in all of David's battles that God actually shook the whole earth and blew smoke out of his nostrils and burning coals. This is more of a poetic rendition of what David was feeling in light of his victories and deliverance from his enemies. But I believe the Lord was speaking this through him and painting a picture of the rapture. Because, okay, let me just move on. So the earth trembled and shook, smoke rose from his nostrils, and the burning coals blazed out of it. Now here it is. He parted the heavens and came down. Where, to earth? No. Dark clouds were under his feet. He mounted the cherubim and flew. He soared on the wings of the wind. He made darkness his covering, his canopy around him, the dark rain clouds of the sky. So these aren't pretty puffy clouds. This is a violent storm going on. Out of the brightness of his presence, clouds advanced with hailstones and bolts of lightning. The Lord thundered from heaven. The voice of the Most High resounded. He shot arrows and scattered the enemy. He routed them with great bolts of lightning. The valleys of the sea were exposed, and the foundations of the earth laid bare. At your rebuke, Lord, at the blast of breath from your nostrils. And here it is. He reached down from on high and took hold of me. He rescued me from my powerful enemy, from my foes who were too strong for me. They confronted me in my day of disaster, but the Lord was my support. He brought me out into a spacious place. He rescued me because he delighted me. Yes, he took me from point A, distress, turmoil all around, to a spacious, safe place where they had no more access to me. Verse 20, the Lord has dealt with me according to my righteousness. According to the cleanness of my hands, he has rewarded me. Now that sounds like the BEMA SEAT. For I have kept the ways of the Lord. I am not guilty of turning from my God. All his laws are before me. I have not turned away from his decrees. I have been blameless before him and have kept myself from sin. The Lord has rewarded me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanness of my hands in his sight. To the faithful, you show yourself faithful. To the blameless, you show yourself blameless. To the pure, you show yourself pure. But to the devious and crooked, you show yourself shrewd. You save the humble, but bring low those who are haughty. Now, I've seen in several places throughout the prophets where God is professing his anger against the haughty. It's always about the haughty. Now, I have a question. Can a Christian be haughty? Yes. What's that telling us? Haughty Christians won't be found blameless. And as far as that goes, isn't it in the New Testament? In fact, I think it's 1 Thessalonians 5:23. Yep, it is. May God himself, the God of peace, sanctify you through and through. May God just save you. No. May he sanctify you through and through. May your whole spirit, soul, and body be kept blameless at the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. That's 1 Thessalonians 5:23. But the point is, Psalm 18 is talking about David was rescued because he was blameless and because he was not haughty. And It was showing that God was angry. It hit smoke blowing out of his nostrils. He parts the heavens. That's what he does at the rapture. He takes us up into a spacious place from the danger of the calamity all around us. Are we going to be here in the middle of the Great Tribulation? No. The enemy is now ganging up on us. And it's starting to get really bad. And then boom, he rescues us. So, yeah. I'm pretty convinced that this is a rescue. It's a rapture. It's a harpazo. It's a snatching away. I think it's one of the best explanations of the rapture in the whole Bible, honestly. And then we have one more passage, one more prophet, and it's Habakkuk. And I'm going to read it from my Bible because it's just where I have a whole bunch of notes. And my version is New King James. And we'll start at verse 2. Chapter 3. Habakkuk, chapter 3, verse 2. O Lord, I have heard of the news about you, or your report, or I have heard of your fame. And I was in awe. O Lord, revive your work in the midst of the years. In the midst of the years, make it known. In wrath, remember mercy. Now, my goodness, what is that telling us? If it's telling you something other than what I'm thinking, please let me know, because all I see is, I know you're a merciful God. I've heard about it. Now, in the midst of the years, remember mercy. In the midst of the wrath, remember mercy. Again, I'm not saying that I believe that means we're here in the midst of the great tribulation. But I believe it might be the midst of the 7-year tribulation. And I can demonstrate this countless ways if you'll give me a chance. But if I'm wrong, tell me. But that's what I see. O Lord, revive your work in the midst of the years. In the midst of the years, make it known. In wrath, remember mercy. God came from Teman, the Holy One from Mount Paran. His glory covered the heavens, and the earth was full of his praise. His brightness was like the light, and he had rays, or lightning bolts, flashing from his hands. And there his power was hidden. Now that sounds kind of like Psalm 18, don't you think? Before him went pestilence, and fever followed at his feet. Now that's a timestamp. Because if this is at the end when Jesus comes down to the earth and he's destroying the other nations and Armageddon takes place, there's no pestilence going out at this time. That's all done. That's been going on early in the tribulation. So this is a timestamp. It's not the end. What we're reading right now. Before him went pestilence. Fever followed at his feet. I think he threw it in there because he wanted to make sure we understood the time frame. Verse 6, he stood and measured the earth. He looked and startled the nations. And the everlasting mountains were scattered. The perpetual hills bowed. Again, the earth is in turmoil when Jesus appears in the heavens. It's not a quiet, gentle gathering. It's a very violent one. I saw the tents of Cushan in affliction. Now, those are somewhere around Kenya or southern Egypt. The curtains of the land of Midian trembled. O Lord, were you displeased with the rivers? Was your anger against the rivers? Was your wrath against the sea? Now, there's a reason for that. Not going to get into it yet, though. That you rode on your horses, your chariots of salvation. Your bow was made quite ready. Oaths were sworn over your arrows. Now, since it's talking about horses here, does this mean this is when Jesus comes down on his white horse and lands on the Mount of Olives and splits it? No, he's not on earth. I believe it's an analogy. It's poetic. He's saying, were you displeased with the rivers? Were you angry against the rivers? Was your wrath against the sea because you rode through them on your horses? Okay, Jesus doesn't literally ride through the sea and the rivers on his horses, on his horse. So, yeah. You divided the earth with rivers. The mountains saw you and trembled. The overflowing of the water passed by. The deep uttered its voice and lifted its hands, or waves, on high. The sun and the moon stood still in their habitation. At the light of your arrows they went, at the shining of your glittering spear. You marched through the earth in indignation. Okay, so now he's not on a horse, he's marching. Does he literally march through the earth? No, it's just showing that the display in the heavens is so violent that it's like he's trampling everything. In fact, it says, you trampled the nations in anger. And here it is. Verse 13, you went forth to deliver your people, to rescue your anointed. That's the rapture. And it happens in a violent situation. It's not a gentle, quiet escape. It's a snatching away, just like Harpazo tells us. So those are the 4 prophetic voices that I'm discussing today. I'm not going to get into Daniel because time. In fact, there's things I want to speak more to these prophetic words. But in the interest of time, I'm going to make that part 2. And in part 2, I'm also going to disclose a prophetic download that I received in 2002 about the end times. So we'll close now, and I'll see you in part 2.